They say true character is revealed when no one's watching. But what if the one watching owns everything? A man in plain clothes walks into a luxury store. He's greeted with suspicion, dismissed with arrogance. What the staff doesn't know? He's not just another shopper. He's the owner. And today, he's here to see the truth with his own eyes. Ethan James stood across the street from one of his flagship luxury stores, watching as a steady stream of well-dressed customers stepped in and out under the golden signage that read Maison J. To the world, he was invisible, just another man in a city of millions. Dressed in a plain black hoodie, weathered jeans and sneakers that had clearly seen better days, Ethan blended effortlessly into the background. The chill of the afternoon breeze rustled the hem of his jacket as he pulled his cap lower over his brow, casting a deliberate shadow across his face. He didn't want to be recognized, not today. This wasn't a regular visit. It wasn't a PR appearance, nor a business check-in. It was personal. Over the past few months, he had heard unsettling whispers. Rumors of biased service, of customers being sized up by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character. At first, he had dismissed them as isolated incidents, but the stories kept coming, from too many voices to ignore. It wasn't just bad service. It was something more insidious: disrespect, discrimination, and it was happening under the name he had worked so hard to build. Ethan hadn't built his brand to cater only to the elite. He had envisioned a space where luxury met warmth, where excellence didn't mean exclusion. That was the foundation. That was the promise. But if that promise had been broken somewhere along the way, he needed to know, not from reports or emails, but with his own eyes. So here he was, stripped of his title, his wealth, and his image, just a man walking into his own store, unannounced, unnoticed. And what he'd discover inside would change everything. As Ethan stepped through the heavy glass doors of Maison J, the familiar chime rang out, an elegant tone he had chosen himself when the store first opened. The air inside was cool, perfumed with notes of sandalwood and citrus, the kind of scent that lingered in memory. Velvet-lined walls, gold accents, and carefully positioned spotlights created an atmosphere of serene sophistication. He had built this environment with intention, luxury that welcomed, not intimidated. But today, standing there in worn sneakers and a faded hoodie, Ethan didn't feel welcome. He felt like an intruder. He walked slowly past the curated displays of diamond-encrusted timepieces, Italian leather bags, and custom-designed evening gowns. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. A showroom made to impress, yes, but also to exclude. Every inch spoke of class and wealth, but not necessarily kindness. He watched as well-dressed customers were greeted warmly, offered champagne, and guided gently through collections. No one greeted him, no one offered him a glance. He wasn't surprised. He had prepared himself for this. But still, the silence hit harder than expected. This was his world. His name was on the wall. And yet, stripped of status, he had become invisible. Ethan paused in front of a glass display filled with high-end watches, sleek, minimal, each one hand-picked by him during the early days of the brand. His eyes fell on a silver chronograph with a deep blue face, classic, powerful, timeless. He gently leaned in, admiring the craftsmanship, the details he knew so well. That's when he felt it, a shift in the air, a pair of eyes watching him, judging. From the corner of his eye, he saw a man approach. Tailored suit, slicked back hair, a name tag that read Martin Green, store director. Ethan stayed focused on the watch, pretending not to notice. Martin's footsteps were slow, deliberate. When he finally spoke, his tone was rehearsed but stiff. "That's one of our most exclusive pieces," Martin said, glancing at Ethan's outfit before continuing. "Limited release, quite expensive." Ethan nodded, keeping his voice calm. "It's beautiful. What makes it special?" Martin hesitated, clearly deciding whether to bother with a full explanation. Then he replied, "Swiss-made, platinum casing, Only a dozen sold worldwide, he added, almost as an afterthought. But if you're interested in something more affordable, we do have options. Ethan smiled politely, but inside he felt the sting. This wasn't customer service. This was dismissal disguised as civility. Ethan gently set the watch back into the display case, his fingers lingering a moment longer than necessary. He looked at Martin and asked, with calm curiosity, "And if I wanted to buy that one right now?" For a brief second, Martin's confident posture stiffened. His eyes flicked down again to Ethan's sneakers, then back to his face. "Well," Martin said, voice tight, "we'd need to see verification of payment first. That's standard for pieces at this level." Ethan tilted his head slightly, a faint smile still on his lips. "Is that store policy or just your personal filter?" Martin's tone grew defensive but polished. "It's about protecting the brand," he replied. "Maintaining a standard. We can't just let anyone walk out with items of that value." "Anyone," Ethan repeated softly, letting the word hang. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The message was already clear. He was being sized up not as a client, but as a risk. There was no scene, no argument, just a heavy silence between two men standing over a glass case. One saw luxury, the other saw judgment. Ethan stood still for a beat, letting the silence deepen. Then, calmly, he said, "So it's common here to question whether someone can afford something, before even offering to help them?" Martin forced a smile, but it was thin, cracking at the edges. "We cater to a certain kind of clientele," he said, his voice almost patronizing. "We simply have to be careful who we allow to handle such items. It's not personal, it's policy." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "No, it's not personal," he said, voice steady. "It's systemic." The words hung between them like a blade. Martin didn't respond immediately. Perhaps he knew there was no defense that wouldn't sound worse than silence. Around them, the store continued to hum softly. Customers browsing, music playing, perfume lingering in the air, but inside Ethan's mind, it all faded. All he could hear was the weight of Martin's words echoing over and over. "We have to be careful who we allow." It wasn't just policy, it was prejudice, wrapped in velvet and designer suits. Ethan stepped back out onto the street, the noise of the city rushing around him like static. He didn't walk away, not yet. He stood there, motionless, eyes locked on the gold-lettered name above the entrance. His name. The cold breeze bit at his neck, but it was nothing compared to the chill he felt inside, the doubt, the disappointment, the quiet rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. He took a deep breath, then turned and walked right back into the store. The door chimed again, softer this time, like a second chance. This wasn't over. He had only seen part of the truth, and now he wanted to see more. Ethan moved past the watch displays and into the coat section. His eyes scanned rows of carefully arranged designer jackets, tailored wool, sharp cuts, neutral palettes. He reached for one, dark gray, Italian-made, the kind of piece a professional might wear on a cool autumn day. He held it up, studying the lines, the craftsmanship, when the familiar voice returned behind him. "Martin." Still the same tone, still the same assumptions. "That one's from our premium line," Martin said, almost as if warning him. "It's not something we usually have out for casual browsing." Ethan turned slowly, holding the coat in his hands, his expression calm but unreadable. "It's well made," he said softly. "How much is it?" Martin hesitated, his eyes scanning Ethan's outfit once again, the way someone might scan for flaws, not features. "That piece is $2,500, he replied, each word enunciated slowly, like he was speaking to someone unfamiliar with the concept of value. "We usually don't keep these out on display for just anyone." Ethan raised an eyebrow, still holding the coat with care. "Just anyone," he echoed. "Is that how you categorize your customers?" Martin's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. "Our regular clients know what they can afford," he said sharply, "and we maintain a certain image here. It's what makes us different." Ethan's smile was faint but sharp. "Different," he repeated, "or discriminatory." For a moment, silence settled between them again, thicker this time. Around them, no one seemed to notice, but to Ethan, it was deafening. Martin wasn't just gatekeeping products, he was gatekeeping dignity. Ethan gently placed the coat back on the rack, his movements precise, almost ceremonial. He turned to Martin, voice composed but steel-edged. "I appreciate quality," he said, "and I think I'm capable of recognizing value." Martin's eyes narrowed, but his tone remained laced with arrogance. "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "I'm not trying to offend you, but let's be realistic. There's no point wasting your time, or mine, on something that's clearly out of reach." Ethan didn't flinch. His stare was unwavering now. "You don't know what's within my reach," he replied quietly, "and assuming you do, based on how I look, that's your mistake." Martin crossed his arms, posture firm. "We're just protecting our brand," he said. "Our clients have expectations. They don't want people who don't belong here touching every item." There it was. The mask slipped, the truth raw and ugly. Ethan felt a heat rise behind his eyes, not from embarrassment but from righteous anger. He had heard enough. This wasn't just poor service. It was culture, cultivated, encouraged, and now exposed. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at Martin for a long, silent moment, long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward the exit. The coat stayed on the rack, but the memory of Martin's words stayed with him. Outside, the cold air felt sharper now, but Ethan's steps were steady. His heartbeat had slowed, not from calm, but from clarity. He had come here hoping to observe, to understand. Now, he understood too well. This wasn't one man's ignorance. It was a store culture built on quiet exclusion, a system that trained its managers to judge worth by wardrobe, to sell luxury but deny dignity. Ethan had once promised that his brand would never become that kind of place, and now it was time to keep that promise. Not with slogans or press releases, but with action. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and began recording a voice memo. "Note to corporate," he said. "Immediate ethics audit. Focus on in-store conduct, implicit bias, and management behavior, beginning with Maison J, 5th Avenue. As he spoke, his tone was calm, but his eyes were fire. The next morning, Ethan didn't return to the store. Instead, he walked into the top floor of his corporate headquarters, a sleek tower of glass and steel in the heart of Manhattan. The executive meeting room waited, sun pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows. At the head of the table sat a single chair, his. He had summoned Martin Green for what Martin believed would be a routine performance check-in, possibly a pat on the back for strong quarterly sales. What awaited him was something else entirely. When Martin entered, his posture was confident, suit crisp and smile professional, until his eyes landed on Ethan, sitting calmly at the head of the table. For a brief moment, the blood drained from Martin's face. "Mr. James, I wasn't expecting—" "Sit down," Ethan said, his voice cool and commanding. Martin obeyed. "You didn't recognize me yesterday," Ethan began. "But I recognized everything about you, the tone, the assumptions, the way you made decisions based not on service, but on skin color." Martin stammered, but Ethan raised a hand. "Don't. This isn't about what you thought you knew. It's about what you showed me." A pause, then Ethan leaned forward. "And what you showed me was exactly why you're no longer part of this company." Martin's lips parted, desperate for a defense. "Mr. James, I didn't know it was you. If I had, I never would have—" "That's exactly the problem," Ethan interrupted, voice calm but cutting. "You shouldn't need to know someone's title to treat them with basic respect." Martin's mouth closed, his hands trembled slightly on the table. "This company was built on more than luxury," Ethan continued. "We built it on dignity, on the belief that excellence should never come at the expense of humanity." He stood, voice rising just enough to fill the room, not in anger but in conviction. You saw a man in sneakers and made assumptions. You denied service, questioned his worth, and tried to mask prejudice as professionalism. Martin tried again. I was just protecting the brand. You were the risk to the brand, Ethan snapped, for the first time letting the edge show. You are exactly what we will never stand for. A final pause. Then the words fell with the weight of justice. Effective immediately, your franchise agreement is terminated. Security will walk you out, and you will not represent my company again. Martin sat frozen. Ethan didn't look away. He didn't have to. As security escorted Martin out of the room, silence hung in the air like the final page of a closed chapter. Ethan didn't sit back down. He walked to the window, gazing over the Manhattan skyline, taking a slow, deliberate breath. There was still work to do. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Lisa, his executive assistant. "Vanessa Cole is here, sir," she said. "Send her in." Vanessa entered nervously. Dressed in a modest blouse and pencil skirt, she looked composed but uncertain. As assistant manager of the Fifth Avenue store, she had witnessed everything. She had felt the culture, both the good and the toxic. Ethan gestured to the chair across from him. "Vanessa, I've seen the way you carry yourself. Calm under pressure, professional, compassionate. That's the kind of leadership this brand needs." Vanessa's eyes widened. "Sir, are you saying—" "I want you to take over as interim manager, effective today." She blinked in disbelief, then straightened her posture. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Ethan said. "Because you don't lead with fear, you lead with respect." Within days of her appointment, Vanessa Cole stepped fully into her new role, not with a loud announcement but with quiet determination. The shift was immediate. Staff noticed the difference not because of new posters or slogans, but because they were being heard. She held daily check-ins, listened without judgment, reassured those who felt overlooked, and challenged those who had grown complacent. Slowly, a different energy filled the store. Smiles became genuine, tensions loosened. There was laughter where silence used to live. Ethan returned for an unannounced visit a week later. This time, as he entered, he was greeted genuinely. A young associate offered assistance without hesitation. The air smelled the same, the light still shimmered, but the tone had shifted. Vanessa spotted Ethan from across the showroom and walked toward him with confidence, pride glowing behind her glasses. "We've started retraining all staff," she said, "not just on customer service, but on empathy, inclusion, and listening. You said you wanted people to feel welcome. We're making sure they do." Ethan smiled, not the guarded smile of a CEO, but the proud, quiet smile of a man seeing his vision come back to life. Ethan walked slowly through the store, his steps unhurried, his eyes observing, not as a critic, but as a guardian. The space felt familiar, yet renewed. Staff moved with confidence, engaging customers with kindness instead of caution. Laughter drifted from one corner, soft jazz played overhead, and the mood was no longer stiff. It was warm. Near the jewelry display, he saw a young man, a customer, asking about a diamond bracelet. The associate, a woman who'd once been timid, was now explaining each detail with enthusiasm. No assumptions, no hesitation, just honest service. Vanessa approached, clipboard in hand, smile already forming. "Good to see you again, Mr. James," she said. "Likewise," Ethan replied, his voice low but proud. "This place feels different." "That's because it is," she said. "We've rebuilt the energy. People feel safe here now, staff and customers alike." Ethan nodded slowly. It wasn't just about one store anymore. It was about culture, about values that started at the top and reached everyone on the floor. And today, he saw them alive, in motion. Back at his office, Ethan stood once more by the tall glass window, looking down at the city pulsing with life. This time, his reflection stared back at him, not as the CEO of a luxury empire, but as a man who had taken responsibility for the culture he created. And changed it. He didn't need applause. He didn't want headlines. What he wanted was consistency, that no matter who walked through his doors, suit or hoodie, designer heels or sneakers, they would be met with respect, with service, with dignity. He picked up his phone and opened an internal message draft to every store manager in the country. Starting today, we define luxury differently. Not by price tags, but by how people feel when they enter. From this moment forward, let our brand stand for something deeper than style. Let it stand for humanity. He hit send. Some changes happen in boardrooms. Some happen on the floor. But the most important ones start in the heart. In the end, this wasn't just a story about racism, power, or luxury. It was a story about choice. The choice to judge or to understand, to ignore or to change, to lead with fear or with respect. And the question now is, if you were in Ethan's shoes, what would you have done? Let this story remind us. True leadership starts where ego ends and empathy begins. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful stories that matter. Because the world needs more stories that change the way we think.